Mary, I'm going to introduce you very briefly, briefly, because your bio was in this month's newsletter.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
But I've known Mary since she first came here to work in Sarasota at the Van Wezel. I was on the city commission at the time, and we had a predecessor who was a mess, an absolute mess, and was losing the city $1 million a year. And Mary came in and very quickly turned it around, and now we're profiting $1 million a year. But I think most people don't know that Mary started out as an actress, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I have my undergraduate degree in speech theater and English and my master's degree in acting and directing. So yes.
See? So we have many talents, those of us in the theater. So I've asked Mary to talk about the changes that have occurred in the kinds of touring shows that come through the Van Wezel that create challenges for the theater, particularly since it's 62 years old today. Now, so in addition to that, Mary made a presentation at the last meeting of the Van Wezel Task Force, and she and another fellow threw out a lot of ideas. So if you have time, Mary, at the end of that, maybe
certainly
slides, we can pull them up for you if you want.
I'll be glad to. Do you want me to start now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody, and I apologize for not being there in person. I'm right across the street. I'm a Tony voter, which means I go see all the new Broadway shows, which means I get the best seats and for free, which I really love that part, you know. And I went into New York last weekend and I got drenched on Saturday and got a really bad cold. So I didn't want to spread my germs to all of you. So my apologies. But next season, I'm going into my 17th year, which it's hard to imagine, Ken. And so I really have enjoyed working at the Van Wezel. As Ken said, I started out in college, and in undergraduate school, I did summer stock with Patti LuPone and Kevin Kline, which was a lot of fun. I worked in the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia, which is very much like the Oslo here, where you produce the shows. And then in Philadelphia, I also worked in a roadhouse where the shows come and go, which is like the Van Wezel and the Straz Center. So it's very important in our industry, the number of seats you have. And people will say, oh, you don't sell out all the time and this and that and the other thing. But what they don't understand is the sellout for us on Broadway is really once you start getting into the high 80s, because then you're getting to mostly single tickets and the like. And the shows won't even look at you unless you have over 2,000 seats. Luckily, I've been around a long time. I've been doing this for well over 30 years. And I have a lot of friends in the business. And that's how we were able to get The Lion King, albeit 15 years into the production, Hamilton 6 years into the production. I would like us to see us get it 2 years into the production, or you know, there's no saying that we couldn't be first, but the Straz obviously has 2,600 seats and we have 1,741. And of course, Tampa's larger than we are. But as we grow leaps and bounds, and we are growing with a huge arts community. It's very rare. You don't have a community that normally has an opera house or has their own ballet company of the quality we have, or a speaker series. A circus is almost unheard of. So anyway, that is one of the biggest problems that I've had. I will let you know I was on the other side of the equation. There for a while, I decided I would go work for a Broadway producing company. So I actually booked tours of Cats and Jesus Christ Superstar, and I had at least 7 tours going out that I booked in every theater in the country. So it was an excellent chance for me to know where all the money is going and what things cost and so forth and so on. So in Sarasota, when I got here, as Ken said, I had to revamp everything because it was done with the idea that all you had to do is be able to bring a show to the theater. It didn't matter if you broke even or not. And then unfortunately, when I was hired in 2007, the market was crashing. And so suddenly the city manager was telling me, gosh, you've got to stand up for your own. So I should tell you today, and all the years I've been here, except for the first 2, the Van Wezel does not use a penny of city money We do not get any taxpayer money. I don't spend any of that. It's all money that's made at the theater or raised at the theater. And as you can imagine, the Van Wezel is a venue with many challenges. I'm sure back in the day when it was decided to put it on the water, I mean, a stone's throw from the water, no one was envisioning sea rise or any of the other things. You're more than welcome, and some of you very well may have come on the tours. Ken, I know, has led a lot of them, where you could see the salt growing out of the floors in our basement. When we did a moisture test on the flooring, they do a moisture test that shows you that it's between 1 and 10. We came out of 13. So every year we're replacing floors down there. It's so wet down there. So that's only going to continue to get worse. I replaced about 2 years ago a $500,000 chiller. I'm replacing another $500,000 chiller this summer. I'm spending $275,000 this summer on revamping the elevators. One of the things they did was they put all the motors and everything outside. So of course, all these motors when we got here were corroding and everything from the salt air. So we've moved as much as we can in-house. The other thing that was done at the Van Wezel is, you know, I work with a consultant that works with museums, and a museum is sort of like a house. People come in, they go when they want to. They go to the bathroom when they want to. But you know, at a theater, we all go to the bathroom at the same time. So it's very important you have appropriate plumbing. So the plumbing that was put in at the Van Wezel is not appropriate. Not to be too graphic, but they have something that's a pipe that's called a grinder, and the sewage goes through the grinder. And because ours isn't large enough, we had to have all sorts of machinations. There is no room for an audience to cross from the bathrooms to a bar at intermission. I spend a lot of time on Broadway, so I disagree with many people who hate our seating because they say, you know, you have to. It's true. It is. It's awful if you're in the middle of the house and you come late, or if you have to go to the bathroom and get out. It's awful. There's no question about it. What I can tell you is it's the safest seating there is anywhere, because people follow in it one another right out straight in an aisle. On Broadway, where I just saw 3 shows over the weekend, everybody gets into a clump, so it takes longer to get out. And I literally had people on top of my arms on each side of me, no leg room. But somehow when we're in New York, we just think it's charming. Where in our theaters around the country, we expect a much better situation. So the other thing audiences have come to want from our theaters is an experience. It's not just coming to see a show. You're coming, you're having dinner, you're having cocktails. You may see a different kind of event. We have educational events that go along with our theater. So anyway, when I got here, I replaced the entire lighting system. We now need to replace it again. We replaced the entire seating. We'll need to do that again. The roof needs replacing. The sound system needs replacing again. We put in the hearing loop. At some point, I'm sure I'll be told that I have to do that. We have gotten, I can tell you our insurance premium for the Van Wezel was way above $500,000 a year. My first insurance premium in the business, it was $25,000, not for this facility, one in Philly, but insurance is astronomical, and our deductible is $6 million. So they are going to make some adjustments to the insurance to see about bringing the deductible and the policy down. But one of the things the Purple Ribbon panel is charged with is finding a situation where they can make the Van Wezel viable for some other purpose other than just a theater. Because you do not want to have a brand new performing arts center that sits farther back on the road, sits on stilts, and has all the conveniences and comforts compete with a cheaper, older venue. What we want to do is complement the new performing arts hall, not compete with. So that's in part of the presentation we gave the other night. Now, of course, all sorts of things, computer programming. the motors that run all of these shows. And we have Hamilton coming up shortly. It has 11 tractor trucks of scenery. 11 tractor trucks is bordering on what they consider a giant show. I mean, Lion King, I believe it was 19 tractor trailers. And when I did Phantom of the Opera many, many years ago, I think it was 26 years ago, it at that point was 24 tractor trailers. But as computers have gotten smaller, we are able to get things into smaller trucks. So that's a good thing. But all of this means we have to have a lot of space offside. We have to have room in the air to dead hang things. And I will tell you, I've said this story so many times. The head carpenter for Lion King said to me, Mary, I've had every single one of these problems you have in this theater in another theater, but I have never in my life had all of these problems all in one theater. And so that is very telling to me, because we couldn't bring the entire Lion King animal menagerie down. I think it was the elephant would fit on the way down from the steps. We had to cut a lot of the things off stage. And so we definitely need a larger space, a higher grid. And I can tell you, in the last 10 years, there hasn't been a theater built with less than 2,600 seats. It's all about the economics for the seats. I pay the same amount of money for a show. Let's just take Josh Groban years ago, not to print this anywhere, but his fee was, $250,000. I'm paying the same fee with 1,700 seats as the Broward Center is with 2,600 seats. So you can see the economics of making it cheaper for everybody is there when you have more seats. So that's really some of the important issues that we do. Let me just see what else I have in my notes here. I also changed the back patio. We put a patio on out there. Who has a backyard like I do? I mean, it is gorgeous. $1 million views. Nobody can beat us. But I will tell you, we've had to repave the entire patio because of the moisture coming in. The other problem, what I wanted to do was have one building that would surface both the orchestra and the Van Wezel, and have the orchestra in what we call one room and the Van Wezel in the other room with a joint lobby. The orchestra did not want to be, after working with them for over 2 years, they did not want to be on the bayfront, and they didn't want to share. And I was sorry, because I thought economics of scale, we would have the same security, the same box office, and so forth. But that, it wasn't, I don't think, in bad faith, but they had a major donor that wanted their own building. But we're still best friends with the orchestra. Joe McKenna and I have been buddies since the day I put my foot in the Van Wezel. We have a huge education program. It's about $1 million worth of education, and that's funded by the Sarasota Performing Arts Center Foundation, which used to be the Van Wezel Foundation. They still fund that, as well as raising money for the new hall. The other problem is, of course, there are not enough dates in season to get us and the orchestra. And I'll be honest, I have played shows on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. The orchestra only wants to play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so that's really difficult. So I've had to make rules where we share things, but there just aren't enough dates. And we're starting to become like other cities, a more 52 week a year endeavor. So that's only going to continue with all of these. And you could get all the statistics and dollar amounts from the Van Wezel Foundation or other people other than me. I'm really here to talk about the theater. So anyway, I will tell you, last year, I'm also on the board of directors of the Van Wezel Foundation, which is now called the SPAC, the Sarasota Performing Arts Hall Foundation. And I went on the architect search committee looking for an architect to design the new building. Within 2 weeks, I had been in Athens, Greece, Norway. I was in Athens, Norway, and Copenhagen within 5 days. We were flying all over the place. We went to Texas, we went to Miami, we went to New York. We visited all these theaters. We talked to the technicians that were working the theaters. We talked to the artists. We saw productions everywhere. And we narrowed it down to Foster, Renzo Piano, and another firm. Renzo and Foster were our top two choices, and Renzo Piano was selected. We are currently finishing the contract negotiations with Renzo Piano, who I will tell you is one of the greatest architects, probably one of the 5 top architects in the world. He believes in this project because he can see what it's like to envision the water along with the site for the building and what possibilities there are. We wouldn't have gotten like people like this to design a theater if we weren't in such an enviable position. Renzo Piano will be here. They will be living on site. They will be selecting through an RFP a local architect. I hope it's someone from Sarasota that will carry out the majority of the on-site work while they're doing the design work. But I just thought, and when I visited their theater, they have a theater in Greece that is very similar to our space. It's looking out to the sea. The neighbors didn't want them to build a new building. They had a lot of adversarial comments, a lot of tough things. And when they finished building it, it is so stunningly beautiful. You can go up and sit on the roof, and it's just spectacular that nobody could ever remember that they hated the fact that this building was going to be built. And pretty soon we will be starting with Renzo Piano. But before I go to new ideas for the Van Wezel, I wanted to know if I could answer any questions about what I've talked about so far. Anything? Okay. Well then, I had a short presentation called Envisioning a New Future for Sarasota Van Wezel Performing Arts Hall. Is it possible to share that on the screen?
Yourself, if you want.
Okay. And Lynn Singleton is someone that I worked for before. I worked for PFM. I ran the Barbara Mann Hall in Fort Myers for 10 years. And I worked with Lynn. And Lynn has a house down here. It's a man. And he has a house down on Manasota Key. So when we were looking for an owner's rep, I suggested their company submit to work with us. So we put together this short presentation for the Purple Ribbon panel. We can go to the next slide.
I think you've got control of it, Mary.
Oh, do I? Okay. So our goals are, as I said, complement, not compete, create flexibility, evolve with emerging trends. We don't want to be static, and 5 concepts to inspire conversation. Did you move it? Okay. One option is to keep it a performance venue. Again, complement it, not compete. Have the downsize the seating, right size seating and auxiliary space. In other words, make the concessions more flexible. What we have seen in theaters, there's several of them. There's one in Texas where you have a flat, flexible floor and the seats literally flip underneath, creating, so 1 minute you could have a gala with tables and chairs, and the next day you could have it flip back and have it be a regular performance space. Now, when I talked to my friend who runs the one down in Texas, I think it might have cost in the area of $1 million to $2 million extra to do this flip floor. And I wanted to know how often does it break, because of course that's all I could see is it breaking. And so they were very positive that it didn't break much, but of course that still remains to be seen. Also, a performance venue could be a feeder to and for the new SPAC. In other words, a comedian, you know how the smaller comedians start out at McCurdy's. They don't go from McCurdy's right to the Van Wezel. they usually go to smaller size theaters, like in at the Strass Center, at the Broward Center. They have different size theaters. And so they basically feed comedians that ultimately end up at the big theater. And then an option to capitalize on the Bayfront. Next slide. And then you can see here, this is the Parker Playhouse that has 1,100 seats. They just spent a good deal of money renovating that space. It's beautiful. This is over in Fort Lauderdale. Let's go. And then here is the Tobin Center that I was talking to you about. You can see the tables set up where they have it to be, you know, like a gala dinner. And then they can be flipped to a regular configuration to see a normal show, or you can have like a cocktail party that you see in the slide to the right. And then a niche destination. Here of all places, we could create a very flexible space where you could have circus type shows. Okay. Now, we think you should capitalize on the Bay location. Nothing has a better view than we do. And over on the other coast in West Palm, they've turned the Royal Ponciana Playhouse into a wall of windows where boats can pull up. There's restaurants. It could be a beautiful restaurant type venue. Open air performance venue. This one gets a lot of people interested in it. What is really, really speaks to the Van Wezel is the shell roof. And of course, that's not our whole roof. That's just part of the roof. So someone was suggesting, why not either use that shell or reimagine it with better materials to make it a giant shade pavilion here on the bayfront with $1 million views where we could seat people to watch amphitheater productions. Oh, a potential to create floating stage. That's fine, go ahead. You can see here, this is in Boston, and this is how this partition, it comes off and it can be moved. So you can put it into different kinds of configurations. We can go on. And then this is also another configuration out on the water where you have the shell-like canopy, and then people sit on the side and get the gorgeous sunshine and take in the water views along with restaurants. And then an immersive experience venue. This is a collective experience because when we do the theater, you know that the audience is the fourth wall. Well, in immersive theater, they rip down the fourth wall, meaning they virtually, the audience happens to be inside the show. Let's go to the next slide. I went to see this show on Broadway. It's called Here Lies Love. And this show played on Broadway. People stood in the orchestra level. They took all the chairs out. And these platforms, you see the lady, Melda Marcos, this is, standing on, move, and people moved as the actors moved, and actors ran up into the balcony. Excuse me. So you are literally part of the show. Keep going. Projection mapping is another way to do it. I'm sorry, I knew this would happen once I started talking. Many of you may have gone to see the Van Gogh exhibit that was out at ETC, or UTC rather. 150,000 people in Sarasota went out and saw this. And there are all sorts of shows like this. There's one from Disney Animation, and you walk through the art. Continue. And here's one that is actually still running in Tokyo. And it's Teams Labs Planets. You literally walk through the artwork. You're not allowed to wear your shoes because you walk through springs and lakes. You also smell the flowers. One of the Purple Ribbon panel had actually been to it. And it makes a very exciting performance concept for a space. Next, please. Then an extreme sports venue. I got a call on this. A man came to see the theater, wanting to say that he'd like to have an extreme sports place here in Sarasota. And those of you that maybe are in better shape than me, I mean, I'm having my shoulder replaced this summer. I've had both knees, hips, and one shoulder done already. But go rock climbing, up walls, bouldering, skateboarding, axe throwing. High ropes is something that I've done many times, quite badly, I might add, where you work as a team. It's a team building sport. So it either could be an individual event, it could be a family doing this together, or for conferences, the high ropes and the rock climbing walls and the escape rooms are team building exercises. And of course, we couldn't stop there because we said, my gosh, outside we have water. So we could throw it in with water skiing, kite surfing, parasailing, jet skiing, and kayaking. And here are some extreme sports venues. This one is in England, where you can see they have all sorts of different courses and things like that, and they can make it changeable or movable. And it would greatly complement the arts that are going on at the Performing Arts Center, as well as what's going on up at the mall with all the rowing and so forth. And then I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and folks were quite upset because, you know, the Hilton or the Hyatt was coming down, and they're like, we don't have a venue. Now, I know the Aura has opened recently. I have not been there, but still, I'm constantly getting calls from people that want to have a gala here, or a prom, or a reception, indoor festivals, trade shows. I'm literally going with the Manatee Chamber next year to Europe to go to Christmas markets in different European capitals. It could be a function or performance space supported by flexible spaces, which could be for meeting, catering, rehearsal, and then an opportunity for outreach and education. One of the things I suggested is leave the theater as it is, change the seating, and let all of the arts groups in the county of Sarasota use this for their education programs. We could build out education classes and rehearsal halls, and then have a stage for all these kids that are working in the arts. So these are just a few ideas to really start people thinking about what this could be. Because remember, when the high school was no longer going to be Sarasota High School, they changed it into a museum. So we had watched the Purple Ribbon sort of focus just on the artistic possibilities for the hall, where actually there are many, many different, and I'm sure if we did a listening tour of the community, we'd come up with many more ideas than what Lynn and I just put forward. So those are a few of the ideas we brought up. And here you can see, this is at one theater that Lynn runs in Durham. And they have a beer festival there, and a prom and all sorts of events. And it really makes the theater the place to be. And I'm not sure if that's in review, complement, not compete, create flexibility, evolve with emerging trends, because these trends wouldn't have been around 15 years ago. So again, questions, comments, anything I can help with?
Wow, that was absolutely fantastic. Mary, money, the TIF monies, are you aware of, I think they're maybe running at 2.5 times the initial projection. Are you knowledgeable about that?
I'm not 100% knowledgeable, but I know it's doing overwhelmingly well. And of course, we never have any problems of thinking of how to use the money. But the good part is that it means that, you know, taxes won't have to be increased for the public side of the money, because the TIF is putting off enough money, which right now it's being used by the Bay right now as we speak. The next part of the Bay to come is they're going to take 2 of the bays of, not the Bay, but 2 of the parking lanes in my parking lot. And they're going to start to convert that to a sustainable shoreline. And literally it's going to come up I think the ground's going to come up about 9 feet. And, you know, and all the ideas everybody's been thinking about for parking and what are we going to do? Because believe me, even though I don't think sometimes people at the Bay or people at the city listen enough to me, well, I always think that because I'm selfish that way, but is that my audience, because for 54 years has parked here, it's not like all of a sudden we're going to say, hey, there's no parking. You know, so I keep drilling down on parking. So one of the thoughts people are having now is if the lawn comes up, then people can park under the park, which I think is an exciting concept because of course, instead of digging down, because of course there's seawater below there, it's bringing the park up. So we are aware that the finances for our end on the public side are doing very well. Of course, you know, along with all of this, there are mobility issues and all sorts of things. But the foundation has to raise the private side of its funding from the community as well. And so they have recently brought on a new CEO, Tanya Moskalenko. And Tanya, I met about 2 months ago. She originally came from Cuba, but has lived in the United States her entire life and was a ballerina at one point. And she was the executive director of Miami City Ballet, I think for 5 years. She worked at the Chicago Theater in Chicago, Illinois. She and I met in Indiana, running a venue for a symphonic project. So she is just here all of 1 week and getting ready to start on the fundraising side of the raising the capital money needed because this is a private-public partnership.
Great. Anything else? Mary, you've been fantastic. We thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want you guys to understand one thing. I am so in support of this new hall. I have been here 17 years now. I can't believe I said that. At some point, you know, they'll take me dragging, screaming out and I'll retire, but not in the foreseeable future anyway, for a few years. And I really think this community deserves a theater with all the amenities and with top of the line. I would not do anything to hurt the Van Wezel. It's been a good friend and partner to me over the years, but when people don't support this project, it's upsetting because many times it's been made to look like I wasn't supporting this project, and I always have been. So I just want you to hear it from me directly, that I love the arts. My life is the theater, and I am very much in support of this. Okay, everybody?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One
Okay.
question, Patrick.
Yes.
Will, both of you, sorry, just technical. Will
Uh-huh.
we be to your presentation from the PowerPoint to be able to put in the?
Yes.
Yeah,
I have a slide here.
Yes, it's
I have a slide.
Okay, great. It'll be in the.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
We've got the slides. It was a question
Okay.
about.
Yeah,
So
and
we've
that's just a little presentation Lynn and I put together. And I know the foundation has other slides on the new hall, but you know, Google Renzo Piano, you will be absolutely stunned with the theaters they've designed. The Stavros Nikiros Hall in Athens is absolutely exquisite. All we need here in Sarasota is a shipping magnet to pay for everything, which is what I think happened there, you know?
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
everybody. Come see the Van Wezel. We have Hamilton coming soon. Lots of great shows. And
Thanks,
we'll be
Mary.
announcing our new season shortly. And in April, we're having a season celebration party. We have some wine and some food to come over and see what shows we've got in store for you for next year, okay?
Great.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Ken.
Thank you, Mary.